Well, looking ahead, let's stay on this. Should we expect retaliation or escalation? I want to bring in former Assistant Secretary of State and author of Red Line, American Foreign Policy in a Time of Fractured Politics and Failing States. PJ Crowley is here. Certainly with your experience at the State Department, I'm very excited to have you on the show tonight. Let's talk about President Trump. Do you think that he did enough? Should we have waited and done more damage, considering that we have let this happen, these atrocities in Syria now for 6 years?
Well, I think he did the right thing, but he still faces the same complexities in Syria going forward that Barack Obama did. I agree with General McInerney that it's unlikely we're going to go to war with Russia. That said, the message from the United States is that chemical weapons is out of bounds, but it leaves a lot of room for Assad, supported by Russia and Iran, to still do a lot of damage against the Syrian opposition and the Syrian people. Just to give you one example of the ambiguity, when you look back to 2013, the president, I think, mismanaged the red line, but by the same token, there was a significant accomplishment. There was the removal of the majority of Syrian chemical weapons. We now know it wasn't all of them. But over the last 4 years,
because
a
the
significant
Russians
number of
did
people.
I'm sorry, not to be disrespectful, but the Russians are the ones that President Obama negotiated with to remove those. And to be honest with you, I mean, that red line that the president said that he wasn't going to let cross got crossed multiple times, even when someone like Secretary of State Hillary Clinton wanted action when it came to Syria. And that President Obama, really failed to do anything. 500,000 dead later. How do we judge that moment in the time of our country and what we didn't do?
All right. Look, President Obama defined the U.S. national interest in Syria as defeating the Islamic State. I would suggest to you that President Trump has defined the U.S. national interest in Syria in the very same way. He campaigned for office expressing great skepticism about getting more deeply involved in Syria. So we will see what the Russian and Iranian and Syrian reaction is. What I was trying to say earlier was that even with this strike, which I think was the right thing to do, what the United States is basically saying to Syria and Russia and Iran is you can still defeat the Syrian opposition, just use conventional weaponry, not chemical weapons. So I don't know that this changes fundamentally what's happening on the ground, and I don't know that this changes in any meaningful way the Trump foreign policy. Well,
but it certainly did send, I think, a clear message that President Trump is serious and that he's not going to let atrocities like babies being murdered, which this isn't the first time that children have been killed in Syria, frankly, to continue to happen. Let's move on to Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. He is set to visit Moscow next week amid all of this, these tensions, certainly between the U.S. and Russia. How do you think that these meetings are going to go when President Trump, seemingly did want to find some kind of detente, if you will, with the Russians, at least when he was on the campaign trail?
Well, having participated in some of these meetings, I would suspect that it's going to be very, very unpleasant. Vladimir Putin's going to have a lot to say to him, and I'm not sure that Secretary Tillerson's going to get many words in edgewise. Look, I think this puts a dent in the aspiration of President Trump. It's a worthy aspiration that he would want to build a constructive relationship with Vladimir Putin, with Russia, but the reality is that the areas of common interest between the United States and Russia are narrowing, and the areas of disagreement, profound disagreement, whether it's in Syria or in Ukraine, are expanding. I think this is a difficult relationship that the Trump administration is going to have to manage deftly, but I don't think that we're going to see the kind of constructive relationship that certainly President Trump aspired to on the campaign trail.